We'll just get everyone connected. Okay, uh, we've got about an hour to talk about encouraging survey response. And before I kind of jump in and introduce myself, I'll just turn it over to Cindy for a moment. Anything you want to say about this series or the organization before we start with our content today?
Hi, everyone. Welcome. And thank you, Al. I really don't have much to offer. I don't have any intro slides, but just wanted you all to feel very welcome to today's presentation. I know that we are recording it. We will send a follow-up email afterwards that will have the recording, I believe, the slides, and also any resources mentioned today. And we strongly encourage you to use the chat feature to ask questions. And I'm thinking that Al would like you to probably unmute and ask your questions also. So I think that covers everything we need.
Thanks, Cindy.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me back. I think in March, I did a survey webinar for this series, and we're back to kind of build on that content with some related but slightly different information. So if you were a part of that webinar, welcome back. And if you were not, no problem. I hope you'll get a lot from our hour we're going to spend together today. So my name is Al Anka. I am a principal consultant at Aurora Consulting. We're located in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And we do a lot of consulting with nonprofits in general. We've gotten involved in the peer recovery and RCO community through some of the different clients that we have and are really excited to be a part of that community. And we do a lot of different types of projects, but a lot of Aurora's background is in evaluation and helping practitioners use evaluation in their organization. And so today we are going to be talking about one of the most common forms of evaluation that practitioners use, which is surveys. And we're going to be talking specifically about encouraging survey response. And so you've got a survey, you've spent a lot of time on it. What can you do to help make sure that once you put it out in the world, you're actually going to get information back, right? It's kind of a scary moment, but it's one that you can plan for and be successful with. So throughout today, I'm going to be presenting. You'll get all the slides and the materials that I mentioned today in an email afterwards. If you need the slides or materials during our webinar today, I'm going to put a link to them in chat right now. You can download them to your heart's desire, but you won't need any of them for just participating. So let's look just generally at what I call the survey design process. This is when you need to design a survey, this is kind of the steps that you go through. You have to kind of plan out your survey. You have to build it. Testing it in any form is really helpful. And then you get to the point where you're done with making it, you're going to distribute it. And then once you get the results back, you're going to report and use those results. Today, we're really going to be focused on the distribution part of this cycle. So we're going to talk about three things today. We're going to talk about understanding your audience. We're going to talk about tailoring your appeal. And we're going to talk about making it easy to respond to your survey. So let's start with understanding your audiences. So understanding your specific audience or audiences that you want to give the survey to is the most critical step in encouraging survey response. Who are these people? What's important to them? What is going to help them, participate in this thing that you're asking them to participate in? How can you plan for some of the things that would address accessibility or ease, and encourage them to want to participate in this thing, right? In this survey that you've created. And the kind of most important concept, if all you take from today is one thing, I would say let's take this one, which is that when you create a survey and you ask someone to take it, that is a relationship, right? You are forming some kind of relationship between yourself, who's the survey maker, right? You're the person that's asking for information, and your participants, who are the survey takers. And in any kind of relationship, both sides of it have needs, right? And successfully kind of navigating those needs is what makes any good relationship, whether it's a friend, a spouse, a child, anyone that you know. And so what I see the most, and I am guilty of this myself, is that when I'm making a survey, I'm very focused on my own needs, right? I need this information so that I can report on a grant. I need this information so that I can figure out what our next program is going to be, right? I need feedback. And so we spend a lot of time thinking about our needs as we're creating the survey. But when we start to think about distributing the survey, we also need to be considering the survey taker needs. What would help them complete the survey and have a good relationship with us through this? So I'm going to give you some strategies for thinking through survey taker needs. So when we're planning for distributing our survey, and we're thinking about our needs, we're thinking about our participants' needs, the thing that we want to do for participants is we want to increase the benefits for them of taking the survey, right? We want to convince them that this is worthwhile, right? You should give us your time and your information. We want to decrease the cost of taking the survey, right? The biggest cost is time, right? If you probably get surveys in your email every day, and you have to decide, am I going to spend the time on this, right? But there are other costs as well. And we need to have an atmosphere. We need to engender trust, right? If they don't trust us, they're not going to engage, right? And so we want to increase trust in this relationship so that people feel like, oh, it's worth it for me to take this survey, and I believe in this organization and believe that I'll be taken care of, right? So these benefits and costs, they're going to be different for different audience groups, right? Depending on who you're targeting with your survey. And I'll just give an example. Recently, in an evaluation I did, logistically what happened was we ran a free program on Friday afternoon so that we could ask people who did the program to do an interview with us, right? They actually also completed the survey. And so we were like, okay, we want to get information from people about this new program. One of the benefits we can do is offer it for free, right? Otherwise they would have had to pay for it. But in exchange, they're going to give us some feedback, right? This is a good way to increase the benefits and still get some of the things that we need. We scheduled the interviews during the day on Monday through Wednesday, right? And that worked really good for me because I work during the day. That's when I want to do interviews. But what we found out is that it happens that it's a lot easier for people who are not working to attend a free program on Friday afternoon and then also do a phone call interview during the workday. And so even though we wanted to reach a broad audience, I had a lot of people who were retirees participating in the evaluation, right? And so we wanted to hear from retirees, but that was only one of the groups that we wanted to hear from. And some of the things that we decided to do in this evaluation impacted who could participate, right? And so that's something we want to pay attention to because it can skew our data. If we get a lot of retirees or any other group in an evaluation, we can't say that like, oh, for other groups that we didn't really hear from, that's also true. So it called into question the information we were getting. So those benefits and costs were different. The things that we did ended up being a benefit for retirees, but it wasn't exactly a benefit for like working parents, right? It was a cost. They didn't want to schedule things during Friday afternoon or during the workday. So that's just one example. Let's look at some strategies to use to increase benefits and decrease costs. I also have this as a handout in the packet that you're going to get in your email, or you can look at in the link. So once you leave today, when you have your own survey, you can use that handout as a way to kind of think through this for yourself. So some of the ways to decrease the costs. If you were in my last webinar, we did an activity where we talked about what we liked about taking surveys as a person who takes surveys and what we don't like about it, right? And so costs are really the things that we don't like about taking surveys, right? And so if we want to decrease the costs, we're trying to reduce those things that we don't like. And you all, if you just sit and think about it a little bit, you'll all be able to come up with your own, expert opinions about what you don't like about taking surveys. So some of the main ones that I want to highlight, the best way to decrease costs is to make it convenient to respond, right? If it is inconvenient to respond to your survey, people aren't going to do it. And the way that you make it convenient to respond is by doing more work yourself. So you're spending more time to make things convenient or to respond so that the people who are going to take it spend less time doing it, right? So you have to kind of balance your own convenience. In my example before, it was convenient for me to do phone call interviews during the weekday, but that changed who was able to respond to my survey. And so I probably should have offered a range of times, some at night, some on the weekend, some during the day, which is less convenient for me, but would have been more convenient for a broader range of people. Number 2, make the survey short and easy to complete. This is hard because we have a lot of information that we want to find out, right? And so if you weren't a part of my other webinar, I'm sure there's a recording of it on the website. Go and take a look. We talk a lot about this. How do you really focus what you're trying to find out and make sure that you're asking the exact questions that you need to know so that you can ask less of them, right? There's a lot of stuff that we put on surveys because it's like, oh, that might be good to know. It makes it longer though, right? So we want to make it short. We want to make it easy to complete, right? It's not hard for people. They don't give up halfway through. Minimize requests for personal or sensitive information. People don't like giving it. So if they think that you're going to ask for stuff that feels really personal or really sensitive, they might not start the survey, right? And then finally, plan for accessibility. We could spend a lot of time talking about this, but I want to just kind of talk through some of the main things that you might want to be thinking about as you're planning to distribute your survey. So number 1, language, of course. If you're writing the survey in English and you're hoping to reach people who do not speak English as another language, or even have literacy or reading level differences, you're going to want to be thinking really carefully about the language that you're using in the survey. You might need to get it translated into multiple languages. In general, we try to write surveys at kind of like a 5th grade reading level. So looking through and making sure that if English isn't someone's first language, they're still seeing writing and vocabulary that's easy for them to understand. Disability. If you're doing a web survey or a paper survey and you have people who are blind, you got to make sure it's accessible, right? And so thinking through who you're sending this to and what some of those disabilities might be, and then how your survey accommodates that is always going to be helpful. Tech. If you are going to send an online survey, is it available to people who are not very online? Are people used to taking online surveys? I've been a part of a lot of evaluations where we're giving in person, and we're handing over iPads. That can be a barrier for people. An iPad is harder to use than paper and pencil, but it's easier for us as the survey taker because we don't have to enter all that data in. So we're balancing kind of our needs with participant needs, so that we get the best response. Location. Where is your audience? Are they at home? Are they at work? Do they have a home address, right? Do they have an email address? Are they coming to you, right? Where are they going to be filling this out, and how does that impact how able they are to fill it out? That makes sense. Time and attention. How much time is this going to take? Are you expecting them to fill it out at the end of your program when you've already dismissed them to go home? Then it's a cost because they're spending more time than they planned to fill out the survey. Attention. Did you just do a program and then everyone's kids came and now you're asking parents to fill out a survey when their kids are there? That's hard. That's harder than filling it out on your own. Do they have the attention? Do you have their attention enough that they can complete it well, right? So these are all things that generally you can think about related to accessibility. If you have questions, put them in chat or even just come off of chat or off of mute. Feel free to interrupt me and ask. We got a question from JK. Can you share a link to last week's development of survey? I'm not actually sure what you're meaning there. Do you want to come off of mute and let me know, and we'll see if we can sort it out?
Yeah, you had mentioned that I guess I missed last week's presentation on development of the survey. You said it could be found on the website. Is there a link that I could easily access that?
Hi, JK. This
Definitely.
is Cindy. And
Hi,
I will
Cindy.
find that link. I'm not sure if my colleague posted it yet, but I'm sure there is a record of it, and I'll do my best to find it for you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and I think if you find that, Cindy, maybe forward it along with the rest of the materials, and then everyone will have access to it.
Absolutely.
Cool, thank you. Okay, so we talked about decreasing costs. Let's talk about increasing benefits. This is actually, I think this stuff is super interesting. If you're have you ever done marketing or fundraising? A lot of this will feel very familiar. But really what we're talking about is how to convince people that they should do this, right? And so there are all sorts of kind of strategies that we can use, and most of them are very simple. And so even just having a list of this, and we're gonna talk more about how this looks if you're gonna write an email to people in a moment. But I wanted to walk through the strategies first because they're very doable for most people. You just have to remember to do them. So increasing benefits is about convincing people that this is worthwhile and you should engage, right? So a very effective, simple strategy is to ask for help or advice, and saying thank you. People respond to people needing help, right? And so if you say, hey, we've got this important survey and we really need your help because you have an important perspective, that makes people feel good. It makes them want to give back because you've acknowledged them, right? Remembering to say thank you is just critical, right? And you can say thank you in the very first email. Thank you for taking the survey, right? We really appreciate it. That kind of human interaction kind of can cut through the noise of I get surveys. I got a survey from Apple, Apple computers a couple days ago, and I was just like, no, like I'm not filling this out, right? But all of you are a part of, mission-driven organizations where there already is a lot of trust in your organizations, and you have the ability to like kind of create a one-on-one connection with someone, even just through a survey. Showing respect for the person, their effort, and time. I do a lot of surveys with teachers, or I have done a lot of surveys with teachers over the years. And one of the things I always say in the email is, we know that you're a teacher and super busy, so we've made this really short and easy, right? I'm not going to ask a teacher to spend a half an hour during their workday to fill out a survey. It's not going to work, right? We want to respect and show that we understand the commitment that they're making to us if they're going to start doing this survey, the time commitment. Provide information about how the survey benefits them or others they care about. I'll just continue my example about teachers. Another thing I always share with teachers is I say, we want to know your opinion so that we can improve this survey for other teachers and their students. So we can improve this program for other teachers and their students. And so one of the things we know is that teachers care about other teachers. Teachers care about students. And so if we say, hey, if you help us, like, it's going to have an impact on the people that you care about. That's a big benefit for people. Makes them want to do it. Yeah, JK.
Yeah, so in essence, that kind of fits into old sales techniques where you're kind of group norming in a way.
Sure.
Do you find in the peer realm, what would be the opinions of folks if I were to say something like, I'm sure you would agree with our standards and policies as peers, blah, blah, blah. And do you think that pigeonholes and offends, or do you think that's inclusive?
What I would say, just knowing a little bit about peer recovery communities, is saying, hey, peer recovery is about our community supporting each other, and this is a way that you can help us support that community better. Right?
Yeah, thank you. Because I remember in insurance, it would be like, I'm sure you would agree that most people would feel, blah, blah, blah. That was your standard line.
Yeah, I wouldn't, that feels a little pushy to me. I wouldn't assume, I wouldn't put words in people's mouth, but I would highlight values. Well, this is the next one. I would highlight values that they share, right? So what are the values of people in these communities that like you can support through your messaging about this survey? I would love to hear. I'll just share my example. I would love to hear anyone else come off of mute and share a value from the peer recovery community that like you think would be something that would be a good message for using if you were trying to ask people to do a survey. You can think about that, and I'll just share this one quick. I'm in Minnesota, so we have a lot of public radio. We're a high public radio state. And one of the things, they always do fundraisers. If you listen to public radio, you know what I'm talking about. One of the fundraisers, one of the tactics they use is they say, if you donate today, we're going to give you a state park pass. And so they've identified that people who listen to public radio also like state parks, and they're kind of supporting that value, right? It's unrelated to public radio. But it's something that they can share and say, hey, we know you care about this other thing, and we're gonna support that, and you can support it by participating. Anyone else just thinking about your own work? What's a value that you could support that you assume that your participants would hold?
Inclusion.
Sure. You could, I think, just again, just off the top of my head, a message that you might say to people is one of our values as a community is being inclusive, and that's why we're asking for feedback from everyone. We really want to include your voice in our programs. Right. Glenn asked, what do you think about using pictures? So tell me more about what you're thinking, Glenn.
Hi. Yeah, like if you have a different sections of different topics that you want to explore with people, it's always I always think it's good to try to sort of give them cues about reorienting them. We talked about this.
Sure.
Now we want to talk about this. Do you think pictures is helpful in doing that kind of thing, or is it distracting? Or is it both?
Yeah. It sounds like you're talking about including it in the actual survey.
Yes.
I don't have any problem with it. Our next point on this slide is to make the survey interesting. And I think having pictures in a survey, if they're relevant and helpful, is just another way that engages people, right? Makes it feel a little different and keeps people moving forward. We're going to look at some email examples in a moment. I think including if you're going to send an email to people asking them to fill out a survey, or even if you're going to hand over a paper survey, putting a picture at the top is a cool way to make it stand out, right? To make it feel like, oh, this survey is important, and you can tell because you can see that I made extra effort to make it interesting for you, right? I put a lot of work in this, and all I'm asking you is to fill it out. That's not what we're saying to people, but that's the impression we want to give people. If people feel like we don't care about the survey, then why should they care about it? Right.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Last one for increasing benefits is you can always give incentives. An incentive is just any gift that you can give people for taking the survey. There's some interesting research that says giving a small incentive before people take a survey is more effective than giving a larger incentive afterwards. And the reason why is because if you give them a gift and say, hey, we're going to give you this thing, and by the way, we hope that you fill out our survey, it gives them it's viewed as a gift rather than a payment. And so when someone gives you a gift, you want to reciprocate. And so even if, one of the classic examples is they used to do mail surveys, and they would put a $2 bill in the envelope. And people are like, oh, wow, I can just keep this $2. I don't even have to do anything. But it was really nice that they sent it to me, so I'm going to fill out the survey, right? There's even research that using a real stamp on an envelope, increases the likelihood that people will return it. Because they see the real stamp as something of value, right? That you've given them. It's odd how all this stuff works. And JK said something about sales tactics, and like a lot of this stuff is related to those kind of tactics. Okay, ways to establish trust. I'm going to talk.
I've used that $2 trick when I was in sales, trying to get people to invest. That worked. Yeah, send out a $2 bill.
It's researched. It works.
Yeah.
I'll share that, I just did a big evaluation. I was basically cold emailing people. It was not people that were a part of a program. And what we decided was to do a $25 incentive. And that was not a gift. That was like, in this case, we were like, we're going to tell people if they fill out the survey, we're going to pay you $25, right? The survey took about 6 to 9 minutes. And that worked. That worked too. So either can work. You just have to decide. When I did programs in person, we would literally just hand over pencils. We'd be like, hey, look at this cool pencil. By the way, would you fill out a survey? Any little thing, helps. Okay, I want to cover this quick and then look at some examples. Ways to establish trust. So the first thing that I'm going to say is if you are surveying people who are a part of your program, you probably already have a good level of trust, right? This is establishing trust is even more important if you do not have a relationship already with the people that you're surveying. And relationship is a loose term, right? If they recognize your logo and know who you are, you're already half the way there, right? So some of the ways that you can emphasize trust is anytime you can create a personal one-to-one connection, even if it's just over email, helps people feel trusting. And so if you send an email asking for a survey, having it come from a real person's email address, having their name at the top, having your name at the bottom, it feels more like a interpersonal communication than it does just like a newsletter that someone sent. Emphasizing your brand, putting your logo on things, making sure that people understand like, hey, we're a mission-driven organization. We give a lot to the community. Can you help us out in this instance? Helps a lot. We already talked about putting important effort into the survey. You want the survey to look like it's important to you, because then they'll feel like, oh, this is important. I'll treat it as such. And then finally, we already talked about not asking about like personal or really sensitive information if you don't need it. Telling people that their responses are going to be anonymous or going to be confidential is just another way to establish trust. Like, hey, we're asking for this information, but we're going to treat it respectfully. Right. Okay, so we've talked about increasing benefits, decreasing costs, establishing trust. Let's look at some examples of this because I think this is the way that it really hits home for people. So, before I go there, there's a handout in the packet that you'll receive. It's literally a photocopy from a textbook, but it really goes into detail about a lot of the things we just talked about. So if you're interested in learning a little bit more about why some of these things work and how to do it, you can look through that photocopy. Okay, tailoring your appeal. So you've already created the survey. Now we're going to ask people to take it. What does that actually look like? So the questions we need to ask ourselves as we prepare to write our appeal, write our email, right? Or even write our little script that we're going to say to people before we hand them the survey, is we want to think about, why would someone want to fill out the survey? What are those benefits? Why would someone not want to fill it out? What are those costs? And what is that level of trust? So there's just a summary of what we just talked about. And if you're doing your own surveys, you're going to do this work yourself. In the handout or in the packet, there's a handout that just is like a worksheet for this. And so if you're doing this yourself, you can print it off and do a little reflection. So let's look at one example. I used to do this with every workshop, and I didn't do it. I haven't done it for a while, but I still use it as an example. Is I used to send survey workshop participants a survey at the beginning, kind of meta. And this is the email I would send to them. So you didn't receive it, but pretend that you got this before this webinar today. So let's look at some of the tactics I use in this one paragraph, right? So very first tactic, hello. And I know your first name because I got the registration list from Cindy, right? So now you're receiving an email from a real person and it has your name at the beginning. So it looks like a one-to-one communication. The reality is that I just put this in my survey software and it's like a mailing list. So I didn't have to send everyone, right? So it's still an email list kind of thing. But having that first name makes you more likely to look at it. First sentence, I'm the presenter for the survey workshop you signed up for. I'm trying to establish trust, right? I'm telling you who I am. And I'm also emphasizing that like you opted into this, right? You signed up for this. So that's why I'm emailing you. I say, please help me learn a little about what your previous experience is with surveys. Saying words like please, help, are very important words in these kind of appeals. So I'm asking you to help me, right? And I'm emphasizing You signed up for a workshop about surveys, and I want to learn something related to that, right? My ask is relevant. Your feedback will help me tailor the workshop. I tell you how I'm going to use this information, and hopefully you see this as a benefit to you, right? If you give me some information, I'm going to improve this workshop so that it's better for you, right? Please take a moment now to answer a few short questions. We got the word please again. We have moment, few, short, all in one sentence, right? We want these words that emphasize that, like, this is going to be easy for you, right? It's not going to take a lot of time. And then I asked you to take a moment now. I don't want you to plan to take the survey later. I made it so short that all you really need to do is click this link and it's going to be over in 2 minutes, right? And I tell you that right here. It shouldn't take you more than 2 minutes to complete, right? And I like to use numbers that are like 2, 4, 6, 9. I'm not using 5, 10, 15, 20, because it makes it seem very specific. And actually, my survey software just tells me, like, it says, oh, people should take this in 6 minutes, right? It shows you that I've taken care to figure out how long it's going to take, right? And so it shows that I've put important work into this survey. And so you should treat it importantly as well. I give you the link and I call it your link, right? Again, emphasizing this kind of one-on-one relationship. And then finally, thank you. Very important to say thank you. And feel free to email me with any questions before the workshop. This is actually an incentive, right? I'm saying, hey, like, I'm asking you to do something, and I'm actually willing to do something too. If you have any questions at all, you can use my time, right? I'll respond to them, right? So there's some reciprocity there. And then finally, I have my full name. I didn't put it on here because it takes up a lot of room, but I would put my entire professional signature at the end of this email that has my phone number, my email, my address, for my office. All that stuff, again, it's kind of like putting a real stamp on an envelope. It's giving people something that, like, hey, if you wanted to call me, you could, right? I'm being transparent with you, right? So those are some of the tactics I wanted to show an example for. And what I want to do next is look at another written appeal and have us just think a little bit about what are the tactics that are being used and how effective is it. So you saw an example. Now let's do one together. And before I move, I'll just share that in the packet, there's 6 more email invite examples that you can look at for inspiration. And I've also made notes about what I think are strengths or maybe missed opportunities, things I thought they could have done better. A lot of them are ones I actually got in my email, right? So let's look at one. Let's read through this. This is a real survey that I received. This is the email. And as we read through it, I want to think about, how did they encourage me to respond? How are they activating those benefits that make me want to do this survey? I did actually take it. Are there any costs that they're addressing, right? And what are some of the ways that they build trust as we go, as we read through this? Again, this is just an email I'm getting in my inbox. I get, how many of them a day? What are they doing to stand out and make me want to complete this survey? So I'll just take a look, read through it, and then let's just take a moment to do that, and then we'll open it up for some comments. So let's take a minute to read through this survey. Okay. I put a copy of it in chat. If you need it to be bigger, you can download a PDF of it. Let's start. Well, I'll just open it up to any of these. If you're willing, come off a mute or even go into chat and just type. What's something that you see that you think is a good strategy for encouraging me to respond? Maybe it's addressing a cost, or it could be building trust. Let's hear a couple examples. And if you're not sure which one it is, that's fine too. Just let us know what's kind of standing out to you in this survey, something that you think might be working well. Okay, we got a couple in chat. JK said it's inclusive of users. Do you want to come off of mute, JK, and tell us a little bit more about how you think this is inclusive?
Well, says they're interested in gathering feedback from people who have used these services, and even mentions specific locations.
Yep. Yeah, and I'll just share the subject of this email is at the top, and they called it Roosevelt Library Survey, and that is my local library. So they have identified somehow, I don't even know how, that like I am in the service area of this library, and they sent me a subject line that was specifically my library, which that in and of itself is going to be very motivating to me, right? I use this library, and now I'm getting a survey about it, right? If I'd gotten a subject line that said Hennepin County Library Survey, I probably would have still taken it, but it would have been less motivated. The email wouldn't have stood out to me as much, right? And so that was something that they put some extra work into, of identifying like, what's my specific interest in this? I go to this library, and then highlighting that for me. So that I think is very effective. They also have this big picture called Hennepin County Library, emphasizing their brand, right? It's a brand I recognize. And so they're building that trust. Yeah, Glenn said the same thing. Orients us very quickly, such as the banner. Yep. It gets right to the point, and it's very specific about what this survey is, right? That's important for people. Okay, Charlotte, do you want to come off mute? Are you able to come off mute and tell us a little bit more about your comment?
Okay, hi. Sorry, it took me a minute. Yeah,
That's
I
okay.
am literally in libraries. I've gone back to checking out actual books, as opposed to reading online. So knowing that, oh my gosh, they're looking at opening some libraries that have been closed due to COVID, and especially with the timing, like if it was around this time of year when kids are out of school for the summer, I would absolutely not only take the survey, I would start sharing it with everybody I know, especially those that have school-age children, because a lot of well, I don't anymore, thank God, but a lot of parents utilize the library for outings and things of that nature with their kids. So yeah, I would absolutely fill it out and encourage lots of people to do the same.
This survey feels very important, right? Like they tell us in the first sentence, we want to reopen libraries that have been closed, and we need your feedback to do that. I mean, to me, I'm just like, where's the link? I'm going to click it now. So they were very specific about the purpose of the survey, and have clearly shown that they know that like I'm a part of this system, right? I go to this library and they want to know my feedback about it. For some people, this might have been the first time that they learned that some of those libraries had been closed. But that again is only going to make people more interested in, in supporting this. Right. A couple other good things I like about this one. They say they would appreciate our feedback, so that's good. They want our help. They tell us it's going to take about 5 minutes to complete. That seems very doable to me. And they tell us that we're going to use these results as we make plans for library service. And so again, it just feels very important. They end with a thank you, which is nice. Overall, the email's not that short, right? Yeah, Alexis, awesome. Do you want to tell us your comment?
Yeah, I like how they offer the limited in-person hours because of COVID. And then below they say, we appreciate your feedback because we would like to then offer more hours based on, our feedback from this survey. So they offer the incentive there. But I do, like, from a marketing stance, think that it's a bit long. A lot of times I notice that you'll lose people. So like you did mention that link for the survey, I feel like it should be higher up. Because sometimes after a paragraph or two, you're like, I don't know, this is too much to read, and people will exit out.
Thank you. Thanks for those comments. Yeah, so you're actually kind of mirroring some of my thoughts about this email. I feel like the middle paragraph is information that is, I think they think it's going to be helpful for us. Like, oh, and by the way, like, here's where you can go for more information. I feel like it's extra. And that's a paragraph that maybe I would put it after the signature, for more information, look at the bottom of the email. So I think that would help shorten it. And as I shared before, I was ready to take this survey as soon as I read the first sentence. So let's put the link there, right? If people want more information, they can keep reading, right? If they're not convinced. But I agree with you, Alexis. I would put the link earlier because people might not need to keep reading in order to feel motivated. A lot of people who receive this email are going to be ready to take the survey as soon as they click on it, right? So, and Kathleen, same with you, or same comment for you. Do we use a too long, didn't read section in an email like this? What I would say is hit your main message first, put the link, and then add any extra information afterwards, right? People can keep reading if they're not convinced. But for people who are ready, just give them the link, right? Cool. Great comments there. Any other comments? Glenn added some. They position themselves as a service, as helpful. And in the second paragraph, and they do that quickly and concisely. Yeah. I feel like they do a great job with their brand here. It's a brand that a lot of people are going to trust anyway. People recognize libraries as a public good, and people want to help libraries. My mom's on the library friends board, it's something that people want to support in their community. And so being very specific about which libraries, identifying that I'm in a community that has a library, those are all things that are going to build trust and like really hit home that like, hey, we're asking for your help and here's something easy you can do to help us, right? So if you are writing email surveys, and have to send emails to people, take a look at those other examples in the packet. Some of them are, they're like this. They're real ones that I got, and you can kind of see some of my comments about what I like and what I don't like, and you can steal stuff from it, right? You don't have to. I'm sure people are actually using ChatGPT or whatever to write these now. I've never tried that, but having some examples and being able to kind of pick and choose what is going to work for your program or survey is a perfect way to write these things. Okay, the last thing I want to talk about with our last 9 minutes is just a couple tips on making it easy to respond. Okay, so we just talked about doing appeals, writing an email. If you're doing an in-person survey where like you hand over like a paper copy of a survey at the end of a program, you should still have an appeal. Like you should still say something to everybody that helps them understand what the survey is and why they should take it. And you can use a lot of those same strategies, right? However, in person, like you have that face-to-face connection, which really helps motivate people to do it, right? So let's talk a little bit more about making it easy to respond in a couple different situations. So this chart is just my experience. I haven't seen research on this. This is just pricey. And the way to look at this is it's titled response rates. When you're doing a survey, the response rate is the number of people who completed it divided by the number of people that you asked to complete it. So if you asked 100 people and 50 people completed it, you got a 50% response rate, right? And thinking about how you're going to deliver the survey has a huge impact on response rate. And so this is my experience, and we'll talk through a couple of these. So at the top is in-person appeals. So this is you've got a program. At the end of your program, everybody's there, right? Or you're on Zoom, whatever. At the end of the program, you hand out the survey and you ask people to take it. If you've got 10 people sitting in a room and you ask 10 people to take the survey and you give them 10 minutes to do it, 10 people are going to fill it out. You're going to have a 100% response rate, right? So if you're trying to get the most people to respond to your survey and you have the option to do it in person, paper and pencil, you're going to get the most response, right? And I would call this a direct appeal because you know who you're asking and you're asking them directly, right?
How do you feel about using like QPR codes that link up in person?
That's fine. I've done that. What I would say is that simple is best. So paper and pencil are the most accessible method of having people fill out a survey. Handing someone a clipboard with a piece of paper on it and you give them a pen and they fill it out, right? There's high accessibility for that. Once you're asking people to take a picture on their phone of a QR code and then fill out an online survey, it's very attractive to us as the survey makers because we don't have to enter data. It's easier for us, right? But it's harder for the survey participant. You know, they have to navigate their phone. Maybe the survey doesn't work well on their phone. It's just easier to say no. They're like, oh, I tried to do it and it didn't work, so I'm not going to do it, you know? So definitely possible. Still a good technique. Does have a few drawbacks that you just have to plan for. One of the things I like to do is I hand out a paper survey that has a QR code on it. So I'm saying, hey, you can either fill this out on paper, or if you want, take a picture on your phone and take it that way. You know, so they can choose what they want to do. I did that with college students recently, and I did it a few times, and almost everyone did the paper and pencil. They still did the paper and pencil. They didn't want to do it on their phone. Okay, email, phone. Not a lot of people are doing phone surveys anymore. You know, you could send mail surveys, right? These are still a direct appeal. You're sending it to a specific person. And so you're able to like use their name, show that you know who they are, right? Activate that one-on-one kind of reciprocity. And, you know, I think you can hope for a 50% response rate with this stuff, right? And maybe you can send it to more people, so you still get a lot of people filling out the survey, but it's not as effective as in-person completion. And then finally at the bottom, the lowest response rates are in-person, what we would call indirect. So that's like a comment box, right? Hey, if you want, fill out this survey, right? You're not actually asking someone directly. You're just like putting the surveys on clipboards at the table, you know, and then if anyone wants to fill it out at the end, they can. That's not very effective, right? And then the other one is what I would call a broadcast method. this is where you're like, okay, like we're going to make a survey, but we're just going to put it in our newsletter, or we're going to put it on Facebook, social media. You don't actually know who you're sending it to. You don't know how many people see it, right? And you have less ability to use methods to convince people to take it. And so you just get a much lower response rate. So you can use this chart just as a way to plan out, what method might be best for you, depending on what you're hoping for. And then we're almost at time, but you can look at all these notes in more detail if you're interested afterwards. I wanted to just put them on here so you would have a copy of them. But just a couple tips for the top two methods here, in person and email. If you're going to do in person, you really want to emphasize one person asking another for help. And so that means don't just hand out the survey, like have someone stand up and say, hey, by the way, we have this important survey. We really hope you'll fill it out because it helps us. All the same stuff we looked at in the email, right? But having one person ask another person for help is by far the most effective way to get survey response. We already talked about paper and pencil being most accessible. The other hugest, biggest tip I can give you about in-person surveys is if you're doing a program and you're going to have a survey at the end, you have to set aside time for the survey. So if your program goes from 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock, you can't hand out the survey at 2 o'clock. You got to hand out the survey at 11:55, because you don't want people to feel like the program's over and they're able to leave, but now they have to do something extra. And so one of the things I like to do is near the end of the program, we say, hey, everyone, we're going to give you 5 minutes for this important survey, and then we're going to wrap up. So you're not actually dismissing them. You're doing the survey, and then you have something that they're staying for. And it might even just be, some thanks and, next steps. But you're not saying, okay, see you later, everyone. And by the way, if you can, fill out this survey, right? People are going to leave. And then the one other one I wanted to cover is email online. We talked about some of this already, but just to reiterate, if you're going to do an email survey or an online survey, test it for smartphone. A lot of people are going to fill it out on their smartphone. And so you need to make sure that when they click through it, it works, right? You want to spend a lot of time on your appeal text, because that's the first thing that people are going to see. And that's what they're going to use to decide if they want to take the survey, right? If you're using online software like SurveyMonkey, Survey Gizmo, stuff like that, learning a little bit about some of the features of that survey software can really help you make the survey a lot simpler. So for example, if there are only questions that some people need to see, you can set it up so that it just automatically shows it to those people, and other people just don't even see it, and the survey appears shorter to them, right? So there's a lot of tools that you can use on online survey that will help you make it a better experience for people. And then finally, one of the things that online survey software can help you do is you can do what's called targeted reminders. So if you send an email through your survey software, you can then have the survey software automatically send an email only to people who did not fill out the survey. And that activates a lot of ability for you to send a very specific message. And so what I usually do on that second email is I say, hey, Becky, I sent you an email 3 days ago and I see that I haven't received a response yet. I know you're busy, but I really hope that you can find some time to fill this out. And I literally get emails from people being like, oh my God, I'm so sorry, I'm doing it right now. Being able to send a targeted message like that to people who did not reply is very effective. And I usually get about half my responses from that second email. Okay, we're at time. Cindy's looking at me. I'll just say thank you so much for being a part of this webinar with me. I'm happy to be with you. I'm sure I'll see you all again. And I'll stick around for any questions that people have. And if you need to leave, feel free.
Thanks, everyone. And thank you, Al. That was wonderful. Well, you can leave it open for another moment or so. See if anyone stays.
Al,
Yeah.
this is Glenn. Thank you.
Hi.
Wonderful. Appreciate it so much. Done a number of questionnaires as a program evaluator and moved to a new neighborhood, which is and there is a kind of a growing neighborhood organization, but they don't know much about what people want, what they want to focus on in the neighborhood, whatever. So I and my wife and somebody else is going to try to put together a questionnaire about neighborhood needs and wants. Are you familiar with any of that?